Hello everyone, I'm Dimitri and welcome to the Bookworm. Today apparently we're playing some book Jenga, so I hope you guys enjoy that. No, actually today we're experimenting with a new type of video. I don't know if this video exists on YouTube, but I'm going through all the books that I read in 2019 and I'm doing just kind of a quick spitfire, whatever comes to mind, review of all the books. And maybe I'll see a pattern of the order of the books that I read. And it'll be interesting just to, what thoughts after putting these books down for a while, what thoughts come up first from them. So, a little social experiment. I guess I've kept track of these books in order from Goodreads. I read 54 books in 2019, and I'll try to go through them pretty quickly because I don't want a 54-minute video for you guys. So, kicking things off, I read Raise High, the Roof Beams, Carpenters, and Seymour: An Introduction by J.D. Salinger. Coming out of 2018, I had read Franny and Zooey for the first time, and so I wanted to get, through the rest of J.D. Salinger's published works. And I think this is his last officially published book, was Raise High, the Roof Beams, Carpenters. That story is two stories, like Franny and Zooey's two stories. Raise High, the Roof Beams was an amazing story, but a little reminiscent and maybe a little bit too much of Franny and Zooey, the Zooey's story. And I think Franny and Zooey did it better. And so I still liked it, but I didn't love it. And then the second book, Seymour: An Introduction, was just super dense and there was like very little payout. I'm even completely forgetting the story. Maybe it'll come to me at the end of the video. But that was the first book I read. Then I don't actually have the book, but I read a Frida Kahlo. It was a Christmas gift, so starting off 2019 by reading a book that I got for Christmas. It was one of these, I don't know what they call it, Taschen books. It's an art book. It was a bio of Frida Kahlo, and it was her art. And this is another one I haven't read, but it's on MC Escher. And the book's pretty excellent because it is a pretty good history or biography of the person, but it also has full page, high quality images of their art. And I'm showing you the wrong book, but there's a significant attention to the actual art, and so I saw a lot of things from Frida that I was not familiar with. Apparently I didn't read To Kill a Mockingbird until 2019. This was my first year teaching it. I'm a high school teacher, and I didn't love it, but I will not tell my students that. I think it's a good, young adult book. I think it's lengthy at times. I think talking about race through a young white girl's perspective is, I don't know how well that's aged. Not that her perspectives are wrong, but I think I'd prefer to hear it from a minority's perspective. Anyways, it's a good coming-of-age story. I think for being, the book that tackles race in America, there's only one chapter that really goes into the Black community, and then those characters are kind of ditched. And yeah, that's my feelings about that book. I don't teach it anymore, and I'm pretty happy about that. The next book I read was House of Leaves by Daniel Z. Danielewski, and this was one of my favorite books. I think this was in my top 5 for the year. Experimental fiction, experimental formatting. It did not feel cheap, which is always the, when you open a page and you see something like this, you feel like it's going to be cheap, but it is not. There are parts of the book that I didn't love. The guy that finds the video, Navidson, his record, I found, there's multiple layers of stories in here. I found his story kind of boring, and I kind of wanted to skim through those or skip them completely, but the rest of the book was really good. One of my favorite living authors, maybe my favorite living author right now, is Karl Ove Knausgaard, a Norwegian author. He wrote the My Struggle series, which, I dropped that book, it's alright, we're rolling with it. The My Struggle series, which you can see up here. Excellent writer. Spring kind of returns back to that format of talking through a memoir, creative nonfiction perspective. which he said he was going to stop doing that after my struggle, but this was a welcome return back to format. Definitely not as good as the My Struggle books, but still fun for me to read. Then I read Roxane Gay's Bad Feminist. Really excellent essays, some better than others, but overall incredibly strong. I want to read more of her stuff. I think this is probably what most people read though. I'm Greek, and I was traveling to Greece, and I knew that was coming up, and so I wanted to read some more Greek books. Nikos Kazantzakis is like the modernist figure in Greek literature, and he's my dad's favorite novelist. This is my dad's favorite book, and I had never read it, although I've read other Nikos Kazantzakis books like Zorba the Greek, which is his most famous, and then he also has The Last Temptation of Christ, which Martin Scorsese turned into a pretty good film, but this I'd still not yet read, and I enjoyed it. Didn't love it. Something else I read by him I loved a little bit more. It's actually the book I read before this. I did this in the wrong order. I don't have this book. I think I lent it to someone, which I'm now realizing was a mistake. But Saviors of God by Nikos Kazantzakis is like a 40-page philosophical text by Kazantzakis, and it's where I think that's where Kazantzakis is the strongest. I don't know if it's the translations that I've read. I really enjoy him as an author, but I think his philosophy is what I find the most interesting, and this was just Kazantzakis' philosophy condensed. So, Saviors of God, I don't have. Maybe I'll Photoshop a picture right here. Probably not. I highly, highly recommend that. That was in my top 5, was Saviors of God by Nikos Kazantzakis. It's a little Nietzsche-esque, a little Buddhist philosophy in there, and also very Greek. Okay. The next thing I read was The Greek Way. I read this, I think, in elementary school by Edith Hamilton. She wrote mythology. She became a honorary citizen of Greece. I really enjoyed this. It was just a great return. The whole thesis of this book is why was such a small country and such a small city within Athens, and for such a small amount of time, a matter of maybe 100 years, why was that specific time in history the most prolific, right? And so she has a really interesting argument about that, and she supports it super well. That was fun. I forgot, I also read James Baldwin, The Fire Next Time. I have that in my class. That was an amazing read. I teach Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and this ties in so well with that, and you can definitely see Baldwin's influence on Ta-Nehisi Coates. It's a book about being Black in America in the 60s, and it blew me away. The Importance of Being Earnest, I read next, and I really disliked it. I don't really get Oscar Wilde. I don't think he's most entertaining, I guess, when he's being snarky, and I just don't enjoy his snarkiness. So there's that. And I think we're reaching the point when I had a pretty severe illness. I was in the hospital for 5 days, and I had septic shock. And so like all my organs got like punched, and it was actually hard. Like I couldn't walk around the block for once I got back from the hospital for I think about a month. And it took me a while to actually read again. I mean, not that I couldn't read, I just couldn't focus. I couldn't think. And that was like the worst part about coming back from the hospital, was like sitting around doing nothing, being away from work, and then I can't even read. So what I do, I read a lot of graphic novels. That was able to keep my attention and keep me engaged, and I could pick them up and put them down really quick. So I read a ton of X-Men, Days of Future Past. I actually picked up the wrong one, which was like the remake of it. Who was that by? Margaret Bennett. Years of Future Past, which was a take on the classic Chris Claremont version of it. It was okay. I read One Soul by Ray Fox, which I thought was okay as well. Scott McCloud wrote Understanding Comics. I've read this before, but I read his actual graphic novel, Sculptor, which just employs a lot of different really cool framing techniques, and seeing how he, that's like the text on theory for graphic novels. Seeing him actually in practice was pretty awesome. What's considered by a lot of people the first graphic novel of all time was Will Eisner's A Contract with God. I thought that was pretty meh, so sorry people. And then I actually read the correct Days of Future Past X-Men series by Chris Claremont. That was great, not amazing. That's contradictory. It was good, but not amazing. So you can see, I really couldn't read anything else. So then I read Frank Miller's Ronin. This was great. Frank Miller's one of my favorite graphic novelists. I don't enjoy the drawings in this as much as like Sin City. It's way more raw, which I think appeals to people other than me. It just wasn't my favorite. What else did I read? I tried to read some poetry. I thought, reading short poetry could keep me interested, and so I read If Not Winter, it's Fragments of Sappho, the female Greek poet. I was going to Greece still. I was hoping I was going to Greece, so I was hoping I would recover enough. The translation by Anne Carson, I think this is considered the standard, what they teach in most college circles is this translation. I really enjoyed it. However, some of the fragments are just like kind of pointless to put in here. This is like everything that we have up until this was published by Sappho. And I think as an introduction, this is probably not the best place to go. But more on that later. I read more graphic novels. Frank Miller's Batman, I think his third Batman. That was just okay. I read Here by Richard McGuire, another graphic novel that was all images, and it's like one house or one area, but it travels through time. And so you get these different stories that are all happening maybe at the same time, but millennia or 100 years or centuries apart. And that was really interesting. Super well done. Not specifically my cup of tea, but I appreciated the art of it. Now back to books I have. All right. Those, I think a lot of those graphic novels I borrowed from the library, which I used to live across the street from. I guess I was able to complete a actual book. So I read The Echo of Greece, which is also by Edith Hamilton. It's kind of the follow-up to The Greek Way. And this is, while that one focused, why was Athens so great and why do we still revere it so much of ancient Greece? This is, how did Athens crumble so fast? And what influence does it still have? Because the golden age of Athens did not last that long, and so what really brought it to its knees? Why did it fail so hard? That was a really great read. I read Infinity Gauntlet because Infinity Wars was coming out or had already come out and I didn't see it yet. That was okay. I read another X-Men by Chris Claremont. That was okay. I really wanted to challenge myself, and I honestly don't remember the arguments too well, but I read Nietzsche, The Birth of Tragedy. I tried to read this translation, and I did not like it. William A. Hausman. Most of the Nietzsche philosophy that I've read have been by Walter Kaufmann. Everything except for Thus Spoke Zarathustra. I prefer the Kaufmann translation. Birth of Tragedy is his take on ancient Greek writing. And honestly, I'm forgetting his argument. But this was like one of his first published pieces. I read Stephen Hawking's Brief Answers to the Big Questions in Life. This was really great. This came out, I think, posthumously. It's a bunch of Stephen Hawking's essays. Really fun read. Like I said, I was going to Greece, and I wanted to read books on Greece. This is one of my dad's favorite books, The Colossus of Marousi by Henry Miller. And, I tried to read other Henry Miller books before. I tried to read, what's his famous book? Tropic of Cancer. And I didn't like it, and I think I want to go back because I enjoyed this so much. And Henry Miller is, there's not too much plot, but just like his voice and his style and the texture of his prose is just so much fun at times. And so it kind of redeems the spare parts that seem kind of pointless. And so I think I would come into Tropic of Cancer with a new perspective after reading this. But if you travel to Greece, I think this is one of the best books to bring Greece alive. Did I read this one next? Yeah, Breakfast of Champions I've been wanting to read by Vonnegut. This was like my first favorite author that I discovered in high school. And I just wanted to read everything by him. This was okay. I enjoyed his drawings. There's a lot of filler in here. The plot starts off really fun and seems like it's going to get meta and definitely the author-y, and then it just kind of doesn't really evolve that well from what I remember. Or there's like the main character is going to meet the author, and the meeting, I was just very let down by the ending. I don't know. A Concise History of Greece by Klog. It's a modern history it's a history of modern Greece. I wanted to travel to Greece and understand my culture and my people better, and this is supposed to be the best history. Okay, I bought this in Greece. God is My Witness. It's it won the EU Prize for Literature in 2014. It's a translated Greek novel, and I really disliked this. I thought it was terrible. Jeffrey Eugenides is Greek, but that's not why I read it. He wrote Virgin Suicides and Middlesex, and I wanted to read this. This was my #1 book of the year. I absolutely loved it. I'll have a separate review maybe one day about this. What did I read next? I read a book on refugees it's called Refuge by Alexander Betts and Paul Collier, Transforming a Broken Refugee System. I volunteered in Greece for a little bit at a refugee camp for the Yazidi tribe, Yazidi people, not tribe, sorry. I was in northern Greece for a while and did that, and that was very illuminating. I wanted to read more about the issue of refugees and the history of refugee policy, and that book was, I think, probably the best book you could read on it from my very limited knowledge of it. I read God Bless You, Dr. Kevorkian by Kurt Vonnegut, which is essentially a short story. Meh. Kurt Vonnegut's Mother Night, a little bit better than Breakfast of Champions, but still my lower list of Kurt Vonnegut books. I read Infinity Wars, which is different than Infinity Gauntlet, and that was very bad. I tried to read more philosophy. This is a Greek poet. So I guess that's one common theme, is like most things kind of relate to Greece or graphic novels this year. The Axion Esti. I think he won an award for this, and I'm forgetting which award that was. Nobel Prize for Literature. Greek poet. I have a hard time getting into poetry, and I didn't really get into this. But I kept trying. The Marriage Plot is centered around... Is that the next book? Yeah, The Marriage Plot is centered around one philosophy book by Roland Barthes. A Lover's Discourse. This was one of the most fun books I read that year, and I would put it in my top 50 books of all time. I've talked about it a little bit on my channel, but different words about love, and then writing essays kind of describing that word and what that word truly means. Just fun. It was just a lot of fun. I read book 1 of the Familiar series. I think one of my students stole it by accident because COVID happened and we had to leave school, and so I never got the book back. I really loved House of Leaves by Daniel Levsky, and I wanted to read more. And I thought this book was interesting, and how experimental it was cool. It's on really quality photographic paper. I thought it was limited by its format. He was trying to stick too strictly to this really arbitrary television format, and it didn't work for me. I didn't love it. But I kept, I wanted to try one more, and so I read the second one, and that's when I absolutely hated this series, and I dropped it. I read more Odysseus Elitis. This is selected poems by him. I read The Audacity of Hope by Barack Obama because I wanted to feel more nostalgic for better times, and this, I read this before COVID became like a huge issue. And I don't know if I could get through this now because it would be too depressing to look back on more hopeful times. Is this the next book? Kurt Vonnegut's A Man Without a Country. This is Kurt Vonnegut towards the end of his life, just reflecting on his philosophies and stuff. It's an incredibly quick read, but just very powerful and a condensed version of Vonnegut's philosophy. Moving forward, Destroying My Pile. I read this version of Sappho, same poems, different translation, and where those poems had lots of fragments, he tried to, this translation by, who translated this? This is the Penguin Classics one. Aaron Poojigan did this one. And Aaron tried to give context on the side, so it's a great introduction if you don't understand what's going on here to what the types of poems are. And then he used his artistic background, he's a poet himself, and filled in the blanks where if there were things missing in the poem, he tried to fill it in with his own poetry. And I don't think he did it liberally. I think he did it as conservatively as possible. And this is a much better intro to Sappho if you want to get into Sappho. I wanted to read some Jack Kirby because he's the king of comics, and his most experimental, his magnum opus, is supposed to be Fourth World, specifically the New Gods in here. And this was a tank of a book. I think this cost me $90, and it used to be, it's more expensive, but it was a deal online at the time. I don't know, I didn't have too much exposure to Kirby, and so I enjoyed his, he's the standard for a lot of things. I enjoyed reading this a lot. It was a lot of fun, but I had to put it down just because of its length. And once I realized that Kirby was making this up as he went, and it seemed like there was this grand narrative that it was moving towards something, but then it stopped doing that. Once I realized he was making up as he went, I started to appreciate this a lot more. And learning more about Jack Kirby and how overworked he was and underpaid he was, I appreciated him as an artist. And this is really heavy, so it's going down. One of my favorite graphic novelists is Christopher Ware. Released a book. There's very few books I bought the day that they came out. This is one of them. I just love his drawings. I love his depressing stories. And I think the standout little story in here is the James Lint story. Each page represents like a year in his life, and so you see like the formation of his consciousness all the way to his death, and it's just this really empathetic story for a really sad person. I loved it. Man, that was a lot of books. Oh, we're still going. I read a Batman book, The Long Halloween. That was meh. Keeping with the Greek theme, I think this is my last Greek book of the year. Eleni takes place during the Greek Civil War, which happened right after World War II. Greece lost 10% of its population, a larger percent than any other country during World War II in that era. And this book really captured the trauma of it. Nicolas Cage I think he wrote for the New York Times. It's a true story. He goes back to Greece after the Civil War many years later and wants to kill the person that executed his mom. Does he do that? You have to read to find out. He published a book, so that should tell you what happened. There was so much fun to read by Tommy Orange. It takes place in Oakland. I was on BART coming back from work on my way to Oakland, passing stops on BART that he was name dropping here. I really love this book. Such a good debut novel, such a great reminder of how important representation is in art. That's not the only reason you should read it, but whatever. I read The Familiar 2 after that. Then I read I'm going to butcher his name. What's his name? Lun Yang. He wrote American Born Chinese. He also wrote Boxers and Saints, and I read both of those. I thought Saints, the second book in that series, was not great. I thought Boxers was so well drawn and such an interesting take on religion. He's Christian, but he's showing the kind of evils that Christianity brought to China. And I think Gene was, exploring this conflict that he had, these two cultures that he's a part of. And it was just drawn so well and so well handled in Boxers. In Saints, I thought it was pretty okay, just not great. I then read Body World because Chris Ware recommended it. Body World by Dash Saw. I really wish I bought this, but I borrowed it from the library. Really experimental graphic novel. One of my top reads that year. Ingmar Bergman, famous Swedish director. He wrote Scenes from a Marriage, one of my favorite TV shows. It was turned into a movie, but shortened. This is the screenplay for it. Screenplay wasn't as fun. I kind of appreciated how much more the film added to it. I thought that the script, being someone that loves reading so much, would bring as much emotion and impact, but it really didn't. Tried to read Walden by Henry David Thoreau because I teach Into the Wild. I love that book. Thoreau's really important to that to Chris McCandless in Into the Wild, and I, in theory, like Thoreau and what Walden stands for, but this is boring. It's a way overrated book. There's moments of just like purity and beauty, but overall, it's a huge disappointment. And then my last book, I love George Saunders, and I finished with a great read, 10th of December. Oh, no, I had one more book. 10th of December, really funny, probably my second favorite collection by him? No, this is my first favorite. This is my number one. It's my favorite George Saunders collection. Read it if you have not read it. My last book I read was Bottom Feeders. This was book number 54. Wow, that was exhausting to talk about. But Ezra Clayton Daniels, well drawn, but not amazing. All right, that was a lot. I hope people enjoyed this. It's Dimitri the Bookworm. I just talked about 54 books that I read in 2019, and I hope I'm repeating myself because I am tired.